Sorry, I have to mute
Talk to
everyone.
you guys and been looking forward to it. And this is a great.
Oh,
Oh, there we go.
yep.
Okay. So just glad to have the opportunity. As far as who I am in my day job, I am a chiropractor and I also have a degree in nutrition. So I do a lot of health and wellness. And personally, I've always struggled with my weight as far as being overweight. So I've tried a lot of different diets, lifestyle modifications, whoever want to call it. I've tried just about everything to some extent or another. And the biggest issue that I would run into was that they just, all the diets and the kind of all the things that are out there, they're just not sustainable. So for me, it was, you do something for 30 days, 60 days, whatever it might be. But then in order to make it a real lifestyle change, you have to be able to make it sustainable. And as far as, for me personally and what I struggle with, it wasn't really happening. So I could do keto or I could do paleo for a short period of time, but then I had a hard time sticking with it. And I would make myself crazy. And then it got to the point where then I wasn't enjoying eating anymore. And then it became problematic. So with my science background, I like to experiment on myself. So all these new things that come out with the different types of diets and the different styles of eating, I like to experiment on myself. And then I'm always happy to share it with, my patients, other people at the gym, obviously when things have been working for me. So I started doing intermittent fasting about probably back in June. I really got into it big time. And it's just like anything, you have to kind of start slow, because what happens is with intermittent fasting, for those of you that don't know a ton about it, is you end up going through a period where you're not eating. And there's different windows of time where that can be, as far as there's a lot of different kind of intermittent fasting schedules out there. There's the 16-8 window, which is where you fast for 16 hours and then you eat between like an 8-hour window. There's a 5 on, 2 days off schedule. So there's a lot out there. And with anything, you have to start slow. So when I first did it, I was used to eating, 3 decent sized meals a day, some snacking in between. And it was really hard to start, because it's amazing what you get used to and what your body, not so much your body, but what your brain gets used to, and just feeling like those hunger cues that are coming from your brain. And the biggest thing to understand is that, especially in the beginning, that it's not physiologically or metabolically what you need. It's more psychological, to where when a certain time, if you're used to eating at that time, your brain's going to say, hey, you're hungry, it's time to eat, even though your body doesn't necessarily need to take in any food at that moment. It's just you get so conditioned to what you're doing. So for me, I started by just dropping a meal. And what I would do was I would either drop breakfast or dinner, and then I would just go down to 2 meals. So I might have breakfast or lunch one day, skip dinner, and then do the same thing. Or I might have I might have lunch and dinner and then skip breakfast that day. So to try and get the eating window down to a shorter period of time. So I started doing this back in June. I got to the point where I was doing about a 16-8. So I was fasting for about 16 hours. And that the good news is that includes overnight. So from the time that you have your last meal to the time you eat again, if you can incorporate it so you're getting 7-8 hours of sleep, however much sleep, add that to your fasting window, that's going to make it easier not only to accrue more hours of fasting, but also you'll eat better if you're not digesting. Because with the way your nervous system works, there's the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest digest part, which is where your body is taking care of some of those visceral processes. The issue becomes you can't do both at the same time. So probably a lot of if you eat too much or drink too much too late in the evening, sometimes you can have a hard time sleeping, because your body's not sure what it's supposed to be doing. Am I supposed to be digesting food, or am I supposed to be in sleep mode? So it can be confusing. A lot of people used to think it was the rest and digest system, but it's actually the rest or digest, because your body can only put enough effort towards one without sacrificing the other. So for me, I found that once I started to, especially dropping dinner, I found was personally better for me, to where if I ate breakfast and lunch and then I was done eating by, say, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I didn't eat until the next morning, then I was sleeping much better. So that really helped with my sleep, and got to the point where now most of the time I'm doing a 24-hour fast during the week. So for example, I'll eat at lunchtime and then I won't eat again until the following day at lunchtime. And Monday through Friday, that works pretty good for me. The weekends, I kind of let it go a little bit because I'm home with the kids and we're usually out doing something. And, there's a lot of things that you do that revolve around eating. So I want to be able to have that flexibility to still be able to eat and still be able to enjoy eating. So I do a good job, during the week. As far as doing like a 24-hour fast, I mean, by no means do you have to. If you still do, the big thing is you want to get at least 12 to 14 hours of a fasting window to start to see some of the benefits. And then based on how you're feeling, you can increase that if you want. One of the biggest benefits from intermittent fasting, not only weight loss, which is obviously a big one, but it helps to turn on what's called autophagy, which is a cellular process of, it's what your body does to normally break down older, decayed, inefficient cells, and it causes your body to make newer, more efficient ones. So to turn over things in a good way. So what happens is fasting helps to increases your body to get into that autophagy phase. So it's basically you're cleaning up some of the old, dead, inefficient cells, and you're making new cells, which helps to increase your metabolism and just kind of make everything a little more efficient. It's kind of like if people who are regular blood donors, what happens is when you're a regular blood donor, they take out blood and then that forces your body to make new blood cells. So that way you're stimulating new, more efficient blood cells because you've gotten rid of a whole bunch of older ones. So with most things in your body, when you have that cell turnover and you're working with newer, more efficient cells, things are going to work better. So it's the same thing with the fasting. By turning on that autophagy, you can really help to kind of expedite that process. And that's where you see a lot of benefits as far as the weight loss, but also it can help with a lot of the brain fog. The issue becomes for a lot of people where when you're eating constantly, what happens is what you want to do is you want to get your body to the point where it's starting to burn your stored fat, especially if you're looking to lose weight or increase your metabolism. If you're eating 3 meals a day and then you're eating snacks in between and you're only going a few hours between meals, what your body's going to do is it's going to use whatever food that you've taken in as fuel, and it's going to keep doing that. So if you don't get to like that 12-14 hour window of post meal, you're never going to tap into those fat stores. So there, it used to be, eat multiple small meals throughout the day. And that's fine. And that can work for some people. For me, it was more of a portion control type issue where I was eating frequently and I was eating too much. And then I would slowly gain weight. So with this, it's helped me to not only control my portions, because I'm obviously eating less if I'm only eating 1 or 2 meals a day, as opposed to 3 large meals and snacks in between. So I'm able to cut down on that and also restrict the amount of time that I'm eating. So that way I can get my body into that fasted state to the point where I'm starting to, see the benefits. So if you're eating constantly during the day or every few hours, you are just continuing to supply your body with fuel. So you'll never tap into those fat stores. So if you're looking to increase lean body mass, it's a nice way to get rid of some of that stored fat. Because what happens is fat as a fuel source is the best, most efficient fuel that your body can use, because you can burn 9 calories per gram of fat, whereas carbohydrates 4, proteins 5. So it's going to be more, it's basically, it's what your body wants to use as a fuel source. The issue for most people becomes you never get to that point to where you're burning that stored fat. It's an evolutionary process where your body is going to store fat because it is such a calorically dense fuel source. So what your body says is, hey, if we're taking in extra calories, extra fuel, let's sock it away for a time that we might need it. Now, nowadays in 2020, it's not so much an issue, but evolutionary, when you used to be, when humans were hunter gatherers and you could go, days, hours, weeks, without having a good solid meal, depending on what you were able to hunt, kill, gather, whatever it was, your body would get used to, okay, let's hold on to those fat stores and only burn them if we really, really need them. So if you're always having food, then you're not going to get to that point. So you have to get your body into that state of cutting down on what you're taking in. So then that way your body will say, okay, you know what, we're running low on energy. Let's start to tap into this fuel source to where we can give the body and the brain the energy that it needs without compromising, muscle. Because one of the biggest things that people say is, oh, if you're fasting, it's going to start to break down the protein in your muscle. Now you have to be fasting for probably, I think it's a minimum of like 36 hours before your body starts to go into starvation mode, to where you start sacrificing muscle. So that's one of the common myths with intermittent fasting, is that you're going to break down muscle. So the good news is you're not going to, unless you're doing like an extremely long fast. So what's going to happen is your body wants to use that stored fat because it is a much more efficient fuel source than carbohydrate or protein. And that's what it's going to do. That's what ketosis is. So the ketogenic diet is by reducing your carb intake and focusing on healthy fats, you're able to give your body more of a fatty fuel source than the simple sugars and the carbs, which again, the fat's going to be the fuel source that most people are going to run efficiently on. So by taking that out of the equation, you can help get your body into ketosis quicker with fasting. It'll induce that ketotic state to where you're breaking down the fat, the stored fat, you're using that, and it's not going to use muscle unless you got to an extremely, starvation period, which again takes a long time. So one of the benefits is you'll also, what I've seen too, is that workouts, when you work out in a fasted state, it makes you can get a better workout from it, because if you depending on when you've eaten, if you have any food in your system and then you're going to go to exercise, now you're going to switch from that parasympathetic digestive nervous system component to your sympathetic, which is your fight or flight. And when you're working out, you obviously want all the muscle, you want the blood, the oxygen, you want everything going to your muscle tissue to make things so that you can be explosive and quick and everything you need to do when you're doing a workout. So if you have any kind of food in your system, again, your body's going to be confused. It's like, should I be digesting this food? Or, now I got to start sending blood and energy over to the muscles because we're trying to do this explosive movement. So the whole idea is when you exercise in a fasted state, your body's able to concentrate fully on doing the workout and getting everything to the skeletal muscle, the lungs, the cardiovascular system. So that way you can get as much of a good workout as possible without having to worry about a component of that that's trying to digest any type of food. So it works out well as far as, you get a good workout. You typically, I didn't have an issue where I was feeling lightheaded or anything like that. Because again, with how you feel, a lot of times it can be psychological. So you might feel like, oh, I really need to eat. I'm starting to get a little bit dizzy. And some people who have hypoglycemia or other issues, that could be a possibility that you want to be careful with. But for most people, it's that psychological attachment that you have to eating, that you don't really need it. You just think you do, and you really want it because of the way the pathways are kind of wired into your brain. So, in short, I'll open up for questions shortly, because if you guys let me, I'll just keep talking all day. So to kind of sum it up, I lost about 35 pounds total from when I started to kind of where I am now, where I'm just, maintaining. I fluctuate. Sometimes I go up, sometimes I go down, but I'm staying consistent around that 35-pound weight loss that I had since, and that happened I started in June. I would say it happened over the course of about 3 or 4 months, getting down to that weight loss. And now the nice thing is I'm able to maintain. So this is the longest that I've been able to do anything, again, like a diet, a lifestyle modification. I have a hard time with diets because they are difficult to sustain. So that's why I like something like this, which really you would classify it more as a lifestyle modification, because it is something that you can continue with. As far as, what do you eat when you are eating? CrossFit does a good job of laying out the nutrition, which is eat meats and vegetables, little starch, some fruit, nuts and seeds, no sugar. So and it says so, right? If you look at Daybreak at North on that big poster behind the front desk, that's one of the tenets of CrossFit is, what you should eat. So if you follow that as a rough guideline, then you're going to be in good shape. So I'll open it up to questions. I know people probably have questions, and I'm happy to, answer any questions or comments or anything like that if you want to think.
Small. With your,
Yeah.
I know we have a lot of families. So
Yep.
with your family at night at dinner time, what do they, I'm assuming your kids eat dinner?
Yes. Yeah. And that's,
What do
part
you
of
do?
yeah. So that's part of the challenge is when everyone's sitting down to dinner, usually what I'll do is I will usually just sit there and have a cup of tea, right? So I'll have something where I'm drinking, where I'm still there. I'm still there for kind of the social piece of sitting down to a family meal, but not necessarily eating something. So I'll just have tea with nothing in it. Again, on the weekend, I'll usually kind of let things go a little bit more. So usually like we'll have, family dinner Saturday, Sunday, that type of thing, where I will sit down and actually eat. But a lot of times during the week, because I'm not eating dinner, I'll usually, sit at the table with them and just have like a cup of tea. And a lot of people ask, well, what about coffee? Can you have coffee? And you can definitely have coffee and other liquids when you're fasting. The key is that you don't want to put anything in it. So you can't have any kind of milk, any kind of sugar, any kind of sweetener, because that again will start to get your body's digestive processes going and it will break your fast. But you can have black coffee, tea with nothing in it.
Would you consider when you're eating, are you keto? Are you just eating natural foods? Like you said, adhering to CrossFit's methodologies of like basically paleo, or do you indulge in carbohydrates? Tell us about, can you give us an example of your lunch?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So I definitely, again, during the week, I do a better job of eating what, kind of what you're supposed to eat, right? There's no secret when it comes to, what you should eat. You should eat, healthy, lean meats, healthy fats, vegetables, nuts and seeds. You want to try and limit the starches. Fruit's good. You just don't want to overdo it on the fruit because a lot of fruits are high in sugar. And then and the big thing is to cut out the simple sugars and the processed foods. So you try and when I'm eating, I try and eat, as close to, usually what I tell people is if you look at a food and it's got 3 ingredients or less, then you're doing pretty good. So if you're going to have a piece of chicken, chicken's got 1 ingredient, chicken. It's not like, Cheez-Its, which has a whole host of ingredients. So the closer you can eat to real food, to nature, to simplifying ingredients is the best. So that's what. So like today, when I get off the call here, I've got a salad that's got some mixed greens. It's got some beans in it. I think there might be some leftover chicken from the other night that's chopped up in it, and I do a dressing of organic extra virgin olive oil and apple cider vinegar, and then just some herbs and spices to just kind of spice it up a little bit, give it a little bit more flavor. But that's nice because you can throw in a bunch of stuff, whatever you want with a salad. Some hard-boiled eggs I think are in there as well, and then I'll do either like apple slices or banana with peanut butter on it for dessert because I love peanut butter. Yummy.
So,
And yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, man.
anyone else
No.
have some? Um, so are you like considerate of how many calories you're getting in, or you just eat till satiety at that point? Do you give yourself an hour window to pack it in? Like, Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
No,
don't
that's a
know.
great question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try and again, because one of my biggest things in the past with eating has been portion control. I really try to, when I eat, I try to approach it as, okay, I'm only eating, especially during the week, if I'm only eating once a day, I'm gonna, sit there and I'm gonna take my time and I'm gonna enjoy the food instead of, just rushing through to just, get it down type of thing. So obviously, if you eat slower, you'll fill up faster because if you eat quick, your stomach doesn't stretch fast enough to the point where it sends those signals to your brain to turn it off. You don't get that satiety signal. So if you eat slower, it gives your body the opportunity to you'll fill up a little bit quicker, so then you won't eat as much. So yeah, so I usually probably won't eat for more than, I usually give myself about like an hour window in the middle of the day when I'm doing it during the week. And then on the weekend, with most things, with most diets, lifestyle things, if you can do it, 80%, 85% of the time, then the other time you can, you owe it to yourself to cheat, whatever you want to call it. So like on the weekend, this past weekend, it was my wife's birthday on Saturday, and one of our friends made this like fantastic chocolate cake. So you can believe I definitely had, quite a bit of that. And I enjoyed it because I knew that, when Monday rolled around again, I'd be back to doing it what I'm doing. So the way I see it is if I can stick to it strictly Monday through Friday, then that gives me the ability to have some wiggle room on the weekends and still enjoy eating. So I'm not so much worried about what I'm eating. Obviously I want to eat as well as I can, but if I'm going to have like some cake or, I'm going to snag some snacks from the kids or something like that, it's not as big of a deal because again, I'm not overdoing it and I'm not overeating. And that was really one of the biggest things for me was cutting down on the quantity and also like the snacking, especially like the after dinner snacking, which is one of the worst possible things that you can do because the later you eat, you really need about a minimum 3 hours post meal to give your body some opportunity to digest before you sleep. So if you are eating something and then you're going to bed less than 3 hours afterward, it is going to affect your quality of sleep, whether you realize it or not. Other questions?
I do. Sorry, I was like jumping in and out.
Oh,
So,
Yeah,
that's
I don't.
fair. Okay. Okay, so I have a question. So are you if you're only eating once a day, is that like you're kind of fasting for 23 hours?
Yeah. Yep. Usually about that. It's usually by the time I eat, it's usually I've fasted between 20 to 23 hours. Yep.
Okay. Does it only work with like I'm terrified at the amount of food I would probably eat if I fasted for 23 hours. There would be nothing left in my fridge. So like does this work if you like shrink your fasting window a little bit? So maybe it's like 18 hours or for like so you could fit more meals, or then are you just defeating the purpose of the thing by eating more meals? Like does it work if you ate like 2 meals a day or 3 meals closer together and then
Yeah, so it's a great question, and one of the nice things I like about it is that it is completely customizable. So if you wanted to, for me, it's just I know I do better if I just sit down and I eat one meal and I'm just done with it. So, but what you can do is there's, if you're going to eat, whatever your window of eating is, whether it's 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, and you say, okay, I'm going to eat, a little bit now. I'm going to eat a little. The bottom line is, however much you eat and when you eat, as long as it's in that window and that works for you, and that's a better way to approach it rather than saying, oh my God, I'm only eating once a day. You could make it, 3 meals in a 6 hour window, something like that. But you're still going to get the benefit because that way you've got at least 17 to 18 hours if you stick to it until the next time that you're eating again. So you'll see the benefits, but that way if that works better for you, then certainly you can do it. The whole point is to try and get a longer fasting window to where you're getting the benefits.
Is there a minimum like length that window should be to really get benefits from it? Like, would you get benefits from like?
Yeah. So you really want to do, so the minimum really is, it's different for everybody, but really 12 to 14 hours. So if you look at it as, if you can incorporate sleep into it, it makes it easier, because that's like a nice 6, 7, 8 hour chunk, however long you're sleeping, to where that adds towards your fasting. So that's why if you try and eat, especially for your last meal of the day, if you want to keep doing, 3 meals a day, if you make your last meal of the day, say around, 5, 6 o'clock, and then you don't eat again, you kind of push your breakfast back the next morning until maybe 9 or 10, then at least you're getting, up to, like, say, like a 14, 15 hour, fasting window. So that way you can start to play with it a little bit. I mean, that's how I started, where I would kind of eat dinner earlier in the day, and then I'd start to push my breakfast back to the point where then I started just dropping breakfast, and then I was doing lunch and dinner, and I would keep moving those 2 meals closer to the point where then I was really only just eating once in the middle of the day, which is basically what I'm doing at this point.
Got it.
So Jamal, you normally work out in the morning, right? So 5:30.
A lot of times, yes.
But
Yep.
how does it feel working out after, say, 16 hours of fasting? Do you feel like you have a lot of energy, or did it take a while to build up to it? What was the transition like?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. It definitely, in the beginning, there were times where I kind of felt like, oh, maybe I should ease up. I feel maybe a little bit lightheaded. And I think I was still getting used to it. So it's, with most things, listen to your body, and try not to kind of, brush over those signals that you're getting, but understand that part of it's going to be that psychological craving for food when you've gotten so used to eating. So it was definitely, I mean, the first, and I'll tell you guys, for anything, if you make any kind of lifestyle change, it takes, they say, about 30 to 60 days for your body to acclimate, and during that period, it can be very uncomfortable. So a lot of times in the beginning with some of the workouts, I had to kind of ease back on the intensity, because I felt like I either didn't have the energy or the stamina, or I couldn't push it like I wanted to. The good news is, now at this point where my body has gotten used to it, now, I can go all out, and I feel really good. And I feel like, if anything, I'm able to, again, work harder, because my body can concentrate all its efforts at working out, rather than having any kind of, portion of food that I may have eaten at some point before the workout that's still digesting.
I have a question to piggyback off of that one.
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that you don't have a post-workout shake.
Correct. Yes, you would be correct.
And how does
Yep.
that affect maintaining muscle mass?
Yep. So, yeah, that's a great question. That's one of the biggest things that one of their biggest concerns is, oh, if I start fasting, it's going to start, I've worked so hard to build up my strength and my muscle mass. I don't want it to waste. And what has, what the research has found is that when you're, even right after, post-workout, if you're not kind of refueling, the muscles, you're not getting enough protein, it takes a long time to where you're actually wasting the muscle. So what I found was that I was able to, and it's hard to say, like, how much of it was due to, the weight loss, and how much was due to increasing my lean body mass. But I can tell you that after doing it and losing a lot of that weight, I was definitely stronger as far as what I can do with the gymnastics movements and the lifts, as far as the weight I can move. So again, I don't know how much of that was, it's when I was at my heaviest most recently, it was like strapping a 35-pound plate on and, doing pull-ups, right? So obviously, if you take that off, it's a lot easier to do body weight activities like a pull-up or climbing the rope. So I like to think that not only did I, not lose the muscle mass and capacity that I had, but I also gained it some, because I mean, when I started at Daybreak, I was like consistently the last person that was getting done with the workouts. I mean, some of them it would take me forever. And it was like that for a long time until I really started losing the weight, and then my body was getting more efficient to where I could actually, keep up with the workouts. So, for me, it didn't, not only did I, not lose muscle, I was able to gain muscle mass, but it was lean body weight. So I lost fat, but I gained muscle. So it definitely, I think that's one of the big myths that needs to be dispelled, is that, oh, if you have to eat right away after a workout in order to, feed your muscles and, help it grow. And, I haven't found that to be the case, to the point where you can still get benefits from, fasting, working out in a fasted condition, and then you don't have to eat right away, to where you'll still get those gains that you're looking for as far as weight loss, but also gaining strength.
Anyone else have any questions for Jamal? No?
I have a question. How old are your kids? Do you have kids?
I do. My kids are 10 and 7.
And so I just wonder, like, what you tell them when you're having tea at dinner.
Yeah. No, I just tell them that for me, that I'm trying to, because they've seen, I mean, it got to the point where they saw, and I think this was, kind of one of the warning signs for me, where they were like, oh, Dad, he'll eat anything. He eats everything. He eats so much, to the point where they were starting to notice it even at a younger age. And I was like, that's probably not good if my kids are seeing me, like, overeat. So I wasn't setting a good example as far as eating habits for my kids. So now it's just like, I tell them that for me, I feel better when I don't eat later in the day. And that for me, a lot of times for what a lot of people mistake as hunger is actually thirst, is actually mild dehydration. So by drinking tea or by drinking water, or what else I might drink when I'm sitting down with my wife and kids for dinner, I try and just let them know that for me it works. I sleep better if I don't eat later in the day. And it's been better too, because obviously losing the weight that I lost, I have a lot more energy, so it's easier to keep up with them than before, where it was harder.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing everything.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, guys. That was awesome. Jamal, thank you so much. This was really cool. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys joining. And yeah, thanks. Rock and roll.
Yeah. And if you guys have any other questions or anything like that, I'm always up to talk about the stuff, and whatever I can do to help and support you guys. I'm absolutely always happy to share. And thanks to Mel for giving me this opportunity to talk to you guys. So
Absolutely. This was great. Thanks
Thank
so much,
you
guys.
so much. It was really interesting, and it's so cool that you've had success with it like that.
Yeah, thank you.